Hello, my name is Soleil and welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about all of the books that I read in December and January. And I'm so excited because there are some absolute bangers in this list and some that are a little didn't really work out. Before we talk about all of the exciting books that I read, let's first talk about Tijn Eyewear, who was so kind to send me 2 pairs of glasses. So let's jump back to past Soleil, who unboxed these, and talk a little bit more about them. So I recently got some new glasses from Tijn Eyewear. Their name is inspired by the Netherlands and Amsterdam, which I am Dutch, so honestly, that's just the cherry on top. But I got these new glasses and another pair. I was going to unbox these with you, but I got too excited and already tried them on. I really loved them, so sorry. But we'll unbox the second pair together. Okay, so I got 2 pairs from them. This is from one of their older collections, and this one is from their new collection. Look how cute they are. Oh, and they have this like celestial pattern detailing. Oh my god, you're seeing like me Inception. That's fine. There you go, you can see them. So I wanted a larger pair and a bit of a smaller pair for some, you know, variation in my looks. But there we go. Oh my god, wait! I haven't had this shape of glasses for a long time, and honestly, they're really cute. Oh, and what I have liked the most about this pair and this new pair in particular is that they're so much more stable than the other pair that I bought earlier this year, and I have not worn those glasses since I bought them because they're so annoying because they slide down my face constantly. But these are very stable, and these are also very stable, so absolutely love that. So these 2 are, this is Rin in green, and then this pair is the Steer Windsor Rim, also in green, because I love green. I'm so excited. If there is anything I love, it is a new pair of glasses, especially in my favorite color, green. So thank you so much to Tijn Eyewear for these 2 new pairs of glasses. I'm so excited to wear them. If you want to check out Tijn, the links will be down below to check out their shop and to shop these 2 specific glasses. And you can use the code Soleil15 for $15 off your pair of glasses. I will leave all of that down below as well. So without further ado, let's chat about these books. So starting off very topical, I read An Offer from a Gentleman. This is the 3rd book in the Bridgerton series. I did read them out of order because I wanted to read the book that corresponded with the series. So last year, no, like 2 years ago when season 3 of the show came out, I read the 4th book, and now here we are. So I read this book. I had mixed thoughts. There are some things that I really love about this world, and specifically Julia Quinn's writing style. I really appreciate how she writes description, how she explains characters, just generally the flow of her writing and the pacing of her stories I think is just really good and interesting. However, the plots are where she loses me a bit, and she lost me especially in this one. So Season 4 Part 1 is already out on Netflix. I won't include any spoilers for the TV show, but you should know that this entire book is, I mean, everyone talks about it being a Cinderella retelling, kind of, but it's about a young woman who is basically the bastard daughter of a earl, I think, and the earl marries someone else who brings along 2 daughters. These are her stepsisters, but she is not recognized as being part of his lineage, and when he dies, her stepmother says she was not included in the will and then treats her like a servant going forward and doesn't include her as part of the family. Then she attends a masquerade ball where she meets Benedict Bridgerton, and the story progresses from there. There are a lot of little elements that I think make this story really interesting. A lot of her internal struggle as a character comes from her past, her history with her family, what she does and doesn't know about her mother, what she does and doesn't know about her father, and how she was brought up. I think it makes her a really interesting character that she was originally schooled to be a young lady and then was basically tossed aside to be a servant. So she has kind of stepped foot in both realms, but she was never really recognized as being part of society life. All of that I find interesting. I think at times in the book there are definite like interesting moments of banter where her character and Benedict's character really mesh, and it's really interesting. They both have like a love of art and culture and literature where they can really see themselves in each other, and they have really interesting banter in the way that she doesn't act like a typical servant or lady's maid. She treats him just like any other person. She doesn't really put him on a pedestal like so much other people in society do. All that is interesting. And then we hit kind of the midpoint, which again, I can't spoil, but if you've seen the show, it's where season 4 part 1 cuts off, and where a lot of people who haven't read the book are like, what? That in essence is the entire rest of the book, and it's an interesting idea. It just doesn't really work for me how Julia Quinn wrote it, and it just kind of progresses and gets kind of wilder and wilder, and things start unraveling, and it just loses interest. And the way that this ends is so chaotic that I cannot wait to see how the show does like the climax of this book, because it's so crazy and wild that you're like, sure, okay. So I finished this book. I think I gave it 2.5 stars. Oh, I gave it 3.5. Interesting. No, I think this is definitely a 3. What? I gave it a 3.5? Okay. I think this is a 3. I am revising what Pastele said. I really enjoyed how much it pulled me in, and again, the pacing of it was so solid that I read it within like 2 days over the holidays, and it really sucked me in, but just the plot was wild. So that's that. Then I read Ride With Me, which is the second book, which is kind of the second book in Cross the Line. They don't need to be read in order. It's not really a sequel. It's kind of an interconnected fictional world where you will know the main character of this second book from this one, but besides for that, you really don't need to read them. Also, these are Formula One romances. You don't need to know anything about Formula One or be interested in Formula One in order to enjoy the book, particularly for this second one. Ride With Me is a lot less entrenched in Formula One than Cross the Line was. I think what I really liked about Cross the Line was it had all these romance elements, but it also had so many interesting facets of Formula One. Ride With Me didn't really have that. Like, one of the main characters is a Formula One driver, but that's kind of it. There's a Formula One race at some point, and beyond that, it's not really that relevant to the plot, which I found a bit disappointing. But the whole book was so good that it kind of negated that. So again, you do not need to know anything about Formula One or care about it to enjoy Ride With Me. Not the case for Cross the Line. I think you have to be a little interested. Ride With Me starts off with that classic like Las Vegas getting married one night type of thing. I feel like there's an actual name for this trope or situation. But the two main characters meet one night. The next morning they find out they got married, and they are trying to deal with it and figure out what this means for them, because they are kind of public figures. This would have implications for the world to find out about, and then they have to deal with that one way or another. So they're kind of getting to know each other a lot closer, and they're kind of dating in a way as this book unfolds. It's really interesting. It's really fun. I love how Simone Soltani writes characters. They feel so fleshed out and real and flawed and fun and sexy, and it's just such a good time. So I rated this one a 4.5 stars. I will say it took me about 50 pages to get into it. The beginning is them like meeting in Las Vegas, and it's a lot longer than I think it needs to be, and it took me quite a bit to like get into the flow of it, but then after that I really enjoyed it. Then I read The Kraken Sacrifice, which I was really looking forward to, and I had heard really good reviews from it. One of my really good friends read it and really loved it, and I feel really bad that I did not love it either. But I have to be honest, it did not work for me. There was a lot of things that I think were interesting and well done about this story. It's basically about a young woman who makes a deal with a demon and then goes to this like other realm and becomes the servant of a kraken. It's spicy, okay? This is a smutty book, and you need to know that, because that is most of the plot. And if you're not there for that, don't read this story. I will say that, because the plot is so thin. It is so razor thin that there's not much to grab onto in this. She makes this deal. She becomes kind of like the servant of this. She's not really a servant. I don't know what to call her. She's there for the kraken. You know, she's there for the kraken. She's just kind of hanging out, and he doesn't know what to do with her, so he just like forgets about her for a bit, kind of neglects her for a bit. And he's dealing with his own personal trauma, which goes really deep. And then she's got all of these things that she's figuring out. But I feel like neither of them were well written. Like, they had such heavy things that they had on their chests and were dealing with. And I feel like neither of them were done justice. And I know that maybe that is a bit of a high bar to set for a smutty romance, but I don't think it is. I think we deserve better. I think we should have gotten some kind of a plot and characters that were well written. I don't think they were. This feels like something that someone just like, you know, typed out late at night and posted the chapters on Wattpad and called it a day. And you know, for Wattpad, I think that's fine, but this book had a professional editor, and where were they? They weren't there for any of it. And the spicy scenes were fine. They were fine. They weren't what I really was looking for, I guess. And when the book ended, that was it. And I was like, oh, that's the whole story? Okay. So I gave this 1.5 stars? 1.5 stars. Yeah. Did I say anything else interesting in my review? Yeah, Thane was neglectful and an idiot for most of the story. Katarina was dealing with so much trauma from her time as being a human that every experience for her in the underwater world felt wrong and uncomfortable. The plot itself was non-existent, just a vehicle for the spice. I didn't care for the story one bit. I'm just glad it's over. Wow, solid review. I agree wholeheartedly. All right, moving on. I just got my physical copy of this book and I'm so excited because I read it as an e-arc, and this is the Fairy Loot edition, and I was so excited when I saw that this was going to be one of the upcoming picks because I already had read most of this story and I knew I would love it and I knew I wanted a physical copy, and I was a little worried how the cover would do because the original cover, which I'm so happy, is the reverse dust jacket, because I was like, listen, I no longer not allow myself, but I don't want to be buying 2 copies of books anymore. I did that for a time. I don't believe it in anymore. We change and we grow. However, the original cover of this book is possibly one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my entire life, and the story inside reflects that as well. So I was like, listen, I'm very excited for the Fairy Loot edition. However, look at her. Insane. So yeah, and look at the naked book. I mean, this is just, I love it when there is a beautiful looking book that reflects the innards so well, like this one. Oh my god. Oh my god. And can I also just say that the first edition print run of this book has the ugliest looking sprayed edges I've ever seen in my life, and it was really pissing me off because I wanted to pre-order it and I wanted to support this book that I got a e-arc copy for and reviewed and enjoyed, but I refuse. I refuse to support this idea that every single book in a first edition print run needs to have an ugly looking sprayed edge. So anyways, I read this book. This book is incredible. What you need to know is that this is a adult fantasy that is based in the Italian Renaissance. This is a fantasy world mixed with some elements of historical reality, including there's the Medici family, the Pope shows up, and Leonardo da Vinci is in this. And it takes a fantastical magical spin on those elements, where the main character is a sculptor. Wait, no. Yeah, like a masonry sculptor. Yeah. She sculpts with rock and tools, and she comes from a line of witches, so she actually has the power to not just sculpt rock, but also sculpt these magical gemstones that are really rare and powerful. And in this society, there's a fear of witches. They've been kind of hidden away and persecuted, and there is a power struggle between the Pope, who's trying to get rid of all of these witches, and then these powerful family, including the Medicis and including this other family that has been living for centuries, and it's kind of unclear why they've lived so long, but it seems to be like a God-given power of some kind. And that's where the story starts off. It's beautiful. I love all of the different magical elements and how there are these real life historical figures that were really intricately woven in with the setting. I think that is something that Isabel Ibanez does really well in her writing. She does a lot of these books that are based in reality but with fantastical magical elements. I loved this book. I gave this 4.5 stars. Highly recommend. Next, I read another arc, which is Sibylline by Melissa de la Cruz. You might know Melissa from, she wrote a lot of those like Disney darker retellings that I think were in conjunction with Disney. Like she had a partnership with Disney and she like wrote these magical retellings of classic Disney fairy tales, I think. So you've probably seen her name on shelves a couple times. I think this was one of her first forays into young adult fantasy. I might be wrong. And like working off an original story. And the story started so interesting. It started off so interesting. It is about these 3 best friends, and in this world there are magical universities, and people who have magic abilities can study at these universities and really hone in on their magical powers. One of these universities is Sibylline, and it is the highest level gold tier university you can study at. Only like 0.02% of people get in, and they have all decided they are only applying to this school and nowhere else. First of all, dumb, stupid, idiotic. Never do that. Listen, it doesn't matter how smart you are. On a certain level, there are so many people applying to universities. You're not guaranteed by anything. So just always have a backup for, you know? It's for the best. So of course, the 3 of them don't get in. This is literally within the first 10 pages. So this is in no way a spoiler. This is the entire plot of the book. The 3 of them don't get in, and they decide that instead of studying at this university, these 3 18-year-olds are going to work there because somehow they have the qualifications. So we're already off to a rough start. Where like I was enjoying this, but there was also this element of like, you guys don't have any qualifications. Sure, you have powerful magical abilities, however, you have no work experience. But okay, fine. The 3 of them all happen to get jobs in their type of departments, and they start working. Throughout this story, they uncover something that's going on at the university, a kind of mystery. Things are happening. There's like a magical item involved, and they start figuring these things out, trying to solve what's going on. There's a secret society. They're trying to listen in on lectures to gain some kind of knowledge. They're not allowed to do that. And my biggest gripe with this book is unfortunately a major spoiler. So I can't say it. What happens is so stupid. It's so dumb and it's so weird, and I'm like, what? This is so unnecessary. I'm like, this was not necessary for the plot. That aside, let's get back to the actual story. These 3 best friends, there's a lot of love and friendship between them, and there's definitely a polyamorous thread going throughout the story, which I think is really interesting, until at some point I'm like, wait, what? So I think it handles the polyamory really well, and I was going to recommend it to a friend. I was like, this is really great. I love the polyamorous relationship that is portrayed in the story up until that one spoilery part where I'm like, wow, yes, okay. So yeah, without giving away that spoiler, I can't get into the problem with this book. But I digress. It started off interesting. It just kept unraveling and getting a little bit worse and a little bit worse, and the plot was just not there. It wasn't a well fleshed out world. There were a lot of things that didn't really line up or make sense. And since I got an e-arc of the book, I did send a note to the publisher with the part that I was like, listen, this was not handled well. This was a little problematic. And then the book just ended. So yeah, the mixed thought on that one. And I gave this book 2.5 stars. Good. Yeah, it really just fell down. It really ended up being a 2-star, but because it was so interesting and I was really kind of pulled into this world right at the start, it was starting off as like a 4, and then it went to like a 3.5, and it just kept falling. So overall review 2.5. The last book I'm going to talk about today is Carl's Doomsday Scenario, which is the second book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series by Matt Dinniman. Love these books. I've been listening to them on audiobook. Really recommend them. They're such a fun time. They are this dungeon crawler style world where this alien enterprise comes into Earth, kind of destroys Earth, and puts them into this kind of dungeon crawler scenario where you have quests, and it's kind of like a D&D style thing where you level up and you level up your character aspects. Crap, I play D&D. I should know what this is called. You know, your strength and your charisma, all of that. You can kind of choose where to put your points, and there are special items, and there's inventories, and all of these humans that survived this kind of attack are then put in this dungeon scenario and then have to try to make their way down through the levels, fighting monsters, sometimes fighting each other, completing quests, and surviving until they get to the lower levels. And it is so funny and a good fun time. And his companion is a cat named Princess Donut, who talks and was the cat of his ex-girlfriend that he kind of got stuck with, and it's incredible. I love it. It's a good gosh darn time, and I really enjoyed this second book. So the second book, I think it was more around like a 4-star. It was still great. It just didn't hit as hard as that first one did, but for no particular reason. It was just vibes based. So those were all of the books I recently read. Let me know what book you recently read, if you really liked it, if you really hated it, and what you are currently reading. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so I know you're out there and I know you're listening. And that's it. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!